If, when thou wilt have begotten children and children's children, and wilt have grown old in the land, you corrupt your works, and make to you an image or any likeness, and do that which is evil before the Lord to provoke him. I attest against you this day, the sworn witness of the heavens and the earth, that perishing you will perish swiftly from the land to possess, which you passed the Jordan. You will not lengthen out days upon it, but will be utterly destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the Gentiles, and you will remain as a little people with the nations, among whom the Lord will disperse you in captivity. And there will you be constrained to serve the worshippers of idols, the work of men's hands, of wood and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But if there you seek to return to the fear of the Lord your Yahweh, your God, you shall find mercy. When you seek before him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you suffer oppression, and all these things come upon you in the end of days, and you be converted to the fear of the Lord your God, and obey his word. For the Lord our God is a merciful God, and will not forsake you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he swore unto them. Shabbat shalom, everybody. This is going to be the last Sabbath reading for this year. We will be having a solar eclipse today, somewhere in the world. And then the slither of the new moon will approach probably Sunday. We'll have to wait and see. So holy be his name, he who is holy and true. So welcome to my channel, The Ancient Book Club. I'm Kylie, and I'm taking you through the Targum readings of the Torah, which is the last book is what we're on, which is Deuteronomy. So in about, 8 to 10 weeks, we will have completed the Torah. So I have put on my Telegram channel the Aramaic and Palestinian Targum readings for this reading of today. This is a book all should acquire. Zen Garcia has put it into print with the Aramaic and Palestinian Targum, which is the translation that was written at the Babylonian captivity when it was first written down, the first 5 books of Moses. So let's just have a look now at where we are at with the calendar. Whoops, let's just get that up. Right, so we are over here. So, hey, today, tomorrow, sometime, we're going to have the slither of the new moon come and appear. Now, I've got here a year of Jubilee. There's a lot of noise about it being the year of Jubilee. I cannot confirm for sure, but I have done a lot of homework, which certainly does lean towards it. If it's not this year, it's around this time. So I've put it up there that we have accomplished 120 Jubilees. A Jubilee is 50 years. You do 7 lots of 7, and then the 50th year is the Jubilee year, which is the time that the land goes back to its rightful owner, the rightful tribe. It's a time that all debt is forgotten about. Okay, so it's spiritual, but it's manifested into the physical. So maybe this year is a year of Jubilee. We will know as the year progresses. So we are coming in to the new year, which is the month of Nisan, also known as Aviv. Now, it was called Nisan when they went into Babylonian captivity. Aviv is actually Hebrew. Nisan is Babylonian. But you know what? Yah doesn't give things names. It's month one. It's all numbers. The days of the week are numbered, and the numbers of months are numbered. We like to label things, but if we're going to be really authentic, it's month one. Okay. So there's so much I could speak into this, and I'll speak into it briefly. These are what you call the spring feasts. In New Zealand and Australia, because we're on the southern hemisphere, it's autumn time now. So this is when these feasts are done. Okay, he has a calendar that begins now, but it actually is two sets of feasts, the spring and the autumn in the northern hemisphere, which is the opposite for us here. So we've got these feasts now, and then in 6 months' time, you have the autumn feast in our springtime, which is the Feast of Trumpets, Atonement, Tabernacles, and the Great Eighth Day. These are the spring feasts, which is in our autumn time. So what happens is the feasts are Passover, okay? And this is where they would take a lamb, they would sacrifice it, and that it would be the Passover lamb, which represented those from Adam and Eve all the way forward to Yahushua or Jesus. They looked forward to the Messiah coming. They already knew he came, because he said to Adam and Eve, I will come. And they knew. Noah knew. Enoch knew. Shem, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the 12 boys, and down through the line. So they did this looking forward to the Messiah coming. Okay, the Passover lamb, the one that lays down his life for the forgiveness of the sins of the priest first, the priest family, and then the nation of Israel, and then everybody in the world. It covered all of that for those that acknowledged it. Okay, that came into his kingdom. This is the system of his kingdom. This is the calendar that it works on every year. Okay, it's a circle. So it's on the 14th of the first month, and it's between the evenings. So the day begins at the moon appearing. Okay, at the end of our normal day is the beginning of the next day. As the sun sets, so night goes first, and then daytime, and then as the sun sets, it's the beginning of the next day. That's the Hebrew calendar. So this is done between the evenings of the 14th and the 15th. It's on the fullness of the moon. Okay. Times that Passover has been accomplished. I'm actually writing a book at the moment called Patterns of Passover, of every time it was mentioned, all the different things that have happened. It's extensive. Nearly everybody in the Bible has a mention of it, or when they did it. But the big ones to bring to you today would be when is with Cain and Abel. The time that Cain murdered Abel was after the Passover. They had presented their offerings, and Cain offered something not worthy. It was actually a dog on the altar. And so God had absolute disdain for his offering, and he loved Abel's, which was the best of the sheep. So Cain was angry with Abel and ended up murdering him. So that was on a Passover, or the day after the Passover that happened, but it was because of the Passover. Another time would be, of course, the famous one of when the Israelites were about to leave Egypt. They were instructed to bring in a lamb into their houses. It's never into the temple. It's always their houses, okay? And one lamb was to feed a number of people. And if you're on your own or you had a little family, bring another little family together so it's enough. Okay, so then they took the blood of that lamb, they put it over the lintels of their house, okay, over the doorway, so that when the angel came through, it knew that that was protected. They had the blood of the lamb over it, so the angel of death that came through did not go there, but it went to the next house where there was no covering, okay? That's a very, very significant Passover that happened, because that's probably where the name Passover actually came from, that it passed over those houses. Also, of course, Yahushua HaMashiach, he went to the cross. He's commonly known as Jesus. He went to the cross. He was murdered at 3 o'clock. And he became the Passover lamb. They had to take him down, remember? Why? Because there was a high Sabbath coming, which is always a Sabbath after the Passover. And it's also unleavened bread, which is on here. So, and I'll go into this. Ron Wyatt, if you know of him, he has found the Ark of the Covenant. And at the Babylonian captivity, Jeremiah and others took the precious things of the temple and took it into a tunnel, and it went out through the gates underneath in the ground and to the skull where Jesus was murdered, and it was underneath there. So waiting for the time that Yahushua came, what actually happened is his blood, that when he died, there was an earthquake and it cracked the ground open and his blood seeped in through down into the ground, and it dropped onto the left seat of the mercy seat, the part that was reserved, the only ever to put it onto the right side when they did the blood sacrifices, sprinkled the blood on the right side only. And it was once a year at atonement, because that other side was left. They didn't know why. They just obeyed what they were told to do. And then when Yahushua died at the Passover lamb, his blood oozed down through and dropped onto the left side of the mercy seat. That is why it says he fulfilled the atonement of our sins, our trespasses from Adam and Eve through all the way to that time, through to the end of time of the 6,000 years of when Yahushua returns finally, and that time is done. That time is done when he comes back. So we do this every year. We don't kill a lamb, although you can, but Jesus is our Passover lamb. But we do celebrate it with lamb and with unleavened bread. I'll talk about that in a minute, and bitter herbs, because it's bitter because of what they went through in captivity in Egypt. Similarly, now at the end of the age, we're in captivity, and people don't know that through the birth certificate fraud, through, they can force to inject you and your family, they can uplift your children. There's so much in this that I won't go into, but it's difficult to teach people that they're in captivity and they don't even know it, okay? We are in a similar position now. They spent 250 years in Egypt. We're spending similar time here now. I won't go into that anymore, but that's Passover. Jesus is our Passover lamb. He fulfilled it, okay? He fulfilled the requirements to fulfill it. It doesn't do away with it, as he said, heaven forbid. It will never pass away until heaven and earth pass away, will his feasts and his ways, his commandments pass. And it's the fourth commandment, remember to obey my Sabbaths. It's not just the Saturday Sabbath. These are all Sabbaths. These are moeds, they're appointed times. And so the next day, okay, which could be a Monday if it all lines up. But the next day, the 15th day, the day after Passover, is unleavened bread, which is a high Sabbath. It's a Sabbath. So these days, we don't do any work on. We don't do any work today, and we don't do any work on these other Sabbaths. And this is the unleavened bread, which is where we eat bread with no yeast in it, the flat cakes. Why? Why do we do this? We do it because yeast represents sin. A little bit of sin tarnishes the whole bread. And the biggest sin is pride, thinking you know better, that you know what to do or what you think is right, and I'll do what I think because I think it, and whatever. That is sin. We are to humble ourselves and to come into his kingdom and to be observant to the things he tells us to. So pride puffs up and it distorts the shape, the function, what it tastes like, what it is to eat, the whole thing. Whereas unleavened bread is flat. It's flat. And if you poke holes in it when you're baking it, it won't puff up. And Yahusha had holes in him. He was nailed to the cross. He was whipped for our transgressions and for healing of the nations. So all this is within unleavened bread. Okay, when was unleavened bread observed? There's a lot of that in the Bible too. One of the most famous is when Melchizedek, who was Shem, came to see Abraham with two angels. Do you remember that? And he was baking cakes. And he came back a year later and he was also baking cakes, unleavened bread. And they had communion together, the bread and the wine. It's Passover. Okay, and as Yahushua HaMashiach said on his last night, do this in remembrance of me. It's communion. The bread and the wine, as he is the Passover, and the unleavened bread has no yeast in it. A lot of the Sunday churches do it often. It's the unleavened bread. If only they knew of his feasts. We're all over the world. We're in his kingdom observing. And it goes for 7 days. Why? Why 7 days? Because you see, on the 7 days, it's the circle of creation of his week that we rest on the Sabbath. We are saying unleavened bread for the 7 days. We won't have pride. We will acknowledge him. We're part of his ecclesia for the 7 days of creation, the 7,000 years. It's all representative of that. So we do these things, not because we know about it, we do it because we're told to, and in doing it, we learn, and we get more knowledge and insight into who he is, because he is a Hebrew Messiah. The only Hebrew means to cross over, and Abraham was the first Hebrew because he crossed over. He came out of Ur, he came out of where his father Terah lived, and with Nimrod as the head, and they all worshipped idols, and he came out and he crossed over the Jordan River, and that's when he became a Hebrew. Hebrews are those that cross over from the world of wickedness, do what you want, to I'm going to walk as you instruct, Father. I'm going to learn your kingdom. I'm going to come into it. I'm going to be discipled by you. Show me, teach me your everything so I can be part of it. And this is what it is. This is what it represents. So the next festival is First Fruits. First Fruits comes on the day after the Sabbath, after Passover. So we had a high Sabbath here, Passover and the high Sabbath, and then First Fruits is when is after the first Sabbath after Passover. So that's the next Sabbath, so it's the next day. Now, First Fruits was the day that Yahushua HaMashiach rose from the grave, and the grave of other people were also broken open, and and many were walking around. Now, this is something I believe because of my studies. I believe that was the first fruits, because that's the first time that people resurrected. There's others as well, but this is the first. Okay. Now, I'll need to say this. A lot of the world believes that he died on the Friday and rose on the Sunday. But remember, the sign of the Messiah is the sign of of Jonah. And Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. So, okay, let's just say he died on the Friday at 3 o'clock. So Friday to Saturday, it's 1 day. Saturday to Sunday. Oh, well, that's only 2. It doesn't add up. And also, he had to rise to be the first fruits. He had to arise on the day after the Sabbath. So, that doesn't work either. The truth is, and I've done a lot of research on this, and now a lot of people I've come across have also done the same research and agree. On the date that when Yosha died, it was on a Wednesday, okay, at 3 o'clock. And there was a blood moon also on that day and a solar eclipse, which they never happened together, but they did. Now, Wednesday to Thursday is 1 day. Thursday to Friday is day 2. Friday to Saturday, which is a Sabbath, is 3. So he had to have full 3 days and nights. Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. And 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock. This is the Sabbath, the 3rd. After the end of the Sabbath, right, probably at sunset, he rose. And so did everybody else. That the graves broke open. And then on this, because that's the beginning of the next day, which is first fruits. So that would have been the Sunday. And that's when Mary and Martha and that saw him at the garden at the beginning of dawn, of the day breaking. So we have been taught a lot of lies. We've inherited a lot of lies. And Easter is pagan. It goes back to Samarias and Tamaris and back to Nimrod. It's very, very pagan. With the egg, it doesn't represent the tomb, it represents the love child from the mother found in the river. You can do your own investigation on that, but we are not to be participating on the works of the world. We are to come out from the world. These are God's holy feasts. The sun came over Passover. This all represents him. And yet I'm starting to discover that the Sunday churches have no knowledge or little knowledge of this, which is concerning. After the first fruits, we've got here counting of the Omer. Well, what the heck is an Omer? An Omer is wheat, because the new year begins when the barley is ripe, okay? And then after the first fruits, you count 50 days. And then the wheat is ripe. The wheat represents the world. Barley represents his chosen. And we have unleavened bread now. After 50 days, we have Pentecost, which is Pente is 50. Okay, and then you are to bake 2 loaves of bread with the wheat and yeast. That's what represents the world. It's got the sin in it. Whereas barley represents the unleavened bread, which you make the cakes with barley. And you are to bring into the temple. But anyway, I won't go into that. But that's the calendar of these feasts that are coming up. On the 10th of the month, they choose the unblemished lamb. And of course, that was the same day that our Messiah came in on the donkey with all the lambs around him that had come from the field where they were separated for this purpose, which incidentally is the same field that Yosha was born in a cave in that field too. So they all came in, and that's when they said, Hosanna in the highest, which is, they worshipped him. They knew that he was I suppose. They were given insight. Perhaps he was a Passover lamb. I don't know. But it was to fulfill that prophecy. Everything was to fulfill prophecy when he came, as it will be when he comes again. But his system, his calendar remains. You see, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't know what hour we are in. We wouldn't know what's happening. We wouldn't be able to count the days, the months, the years, the jubilees, and know the end of the 6,000 years, which is what we are ending now. And if it isn't this year, it is very, very close. We know the season, guys. Yeah. So that's his calendar. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to private message me. It's a lot to digest, but it's only when you do that you learn. You don't learn by just listening to this. Half an hour time, it will all be a mush and you won't remember it. But you do when you do it. When you participate, that's how you learn. And that's why he says, come unto me, children, unless we come unto him. We're not worthy of the kingdom of God. Well, why is that? Because children shema, they listen and obey. They don't reason. They don't say, well, no, because of, or, I know better than that, or whatever. They go, okay, Dad said to do it. I've got to do this now. So that's how we are to be. That's our heart posture. And that's how we learn these things. And then from there, we're given more responsibility and more responsibility and more insight and more insight. And we start maturing and growing. Okay. So that's that. Now, let's get on to our reading. Sorry I took so long. Deuteronomy 3-7.
And I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that good hill country and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, Enough from you. Do not speak to me of this matter again. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look at it with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people, and he shall put them in possession of the land that you shall see. So we remained in the valley opposite Beth Peor. And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the rules that I am teaching you, and do them, that you may live, and go in and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who followed the Baal of Peor. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today. See, I have taught you statutes and rules, as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Keep them and do them, for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it, as the Lord our God is to us, whenever we call upon him? And what great nation is there that has statutes and rules so righteous as all this law that I set before you today? Only take care and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children, how on the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, Gather the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children so. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is, the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and rules, that you might do them in the land that you are going over to possess. Therefore, watch yourselves very carefully, since you saw no form on the day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Beware lest you act corruptly by making a carved image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. And beware lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them, things that the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me because of you, and he swore that I should not cross the Jordan, and that I should not enter the good land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. For I must die in this land. I must not go over the Jordan. But you shall go over and take possession of that good land. Take care lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make a carved image, the form of anything that the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you father children and children's children and have grown old in the land, and you act corruptly by making a carved image in the form of anything, and by doing what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, so as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you will soon utterly perish from the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. You will not live long in it, but will be utterly destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord will drive you. And there you will serve gods of wood and stone, the work of human hands, that neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him if you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in tribulation, and all these things come upon you in the latter days, you will return to the Lord your God and obey his voice. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not leave you or destroy you, or forget the covenant with your fathers that he swore to them. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other, whether such a great thing as this has ever happened or was ever heard of. Did any people ever hear the voice of a God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard, and still live? Or has any God ever attempted to go and take a nation for himself from the midst of another nation, by trials, by signs, by wonders, and by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great deeds of terror, all of which the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord is God. There is no other besides him. Out of heaven he let you hear his voice, that he might discipline you. And on earth he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers and chose their offspring after them, and brought you out of Egypt with his own presence, by his great power, driving out before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know therefore today, and lay it to your heart, that the Lord is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities in the east beyond the Jordan, that the manslayer might flee there, anyone who kills his neighbor unintentionally without being at enmity with him in time past. He may flee to one of these cities and save his life. Bezer in the wilderness on the tableland for the Reubenites, Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan for the Manassites. This is the law that Moses set before the people of Israel. These are the testimonies, the statutes, and the rules which Moses spoke to the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond the Jordan in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the people of Israel defeated when they came out of Egypt. And they took possession of his land and the land of Og, the king of Bashan, the two kings of the Amorites, who lived to the east beyond the Jordan, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, as far as Mount Sirion, that is, Hermon, together with all the Arabah on the east side of the Jordan, as far as the sea of the Arabah, under the slopes of Pisgah. And
now I just want to stop there because Moses summoned all Israel. Now, Israel are the 12 tribes, okay, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel and he had 12 sons and one daughter, which was Dinah, who, anyway, I won't go there. So there were 12 tribes. They ended up going into Israel and then they dispersed. Israel went north and Judah, and I say Judah because it wasn't just Judah, it was some of Judah, some of Benjamin, some of Levites remained in Israel, which meant that the Messiah could come. But remember, after 70 AD, the temple got collapsed and they all scattered. They joined the rest because Israel went up to the Caucasus Mountains into Europe, okay, and they became the Europeans, which is what we are. And then over a period of time, they went and into Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and America. We are the product of Israel. So when it talks about the children that will be scattered, you know, is more numerous than the stars in the sky and the sand on the ground. That's who we are, and we are scattered abroad. We disobeyed. We didn't listen. We didn't do. When do we ever, as a nation, really? There's odd people here and there that do now. But we are returning. There's a lot of people now coming back to his ways and his Torah and cleaning their lives up and coming back to the true names of our Father, Yahweh, Yahweh, and Yahusha instead of Jesus, which is a history on its own. You know, we're going back to truth. But, you know, when he talks, he's talking to all Israel. He's talking, this is our family. This is our great-grandparents. Our heritage was at Mount Sinai. And when he gave the covenants to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's our grandparents. We need to remember these things. We've lost our way as we have sojourned amongst, you know, through into the different nations. We've lost our way, like they lost their way in the very short time that they were in Egypt. They forgot, and yet Moses was a grandson of Levi. Levi's daughter was Jehoshaphat. Excuse my pronunciation. And she was Aaron, Miriam, and Moses' mum. Even then, a lot of the people had lost their way, that he had to write it down and with his own finger give them the 10 Commandments. And as it says in Jeremiah, you know, seek ye the good way, the old way, the ancient path, where the good way is. And this is it. This is who we are. We've lost our way. It seems so quick that we lose our way and just want to do what we want and see it the way we see it without actually reading what the Father has told us. So, again, Moses summoned all Israel, and this is pertinent today as it was back then, because it's for all generations to the end of time, till heaven and earth passes away. Let's go.
Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today, and you shall learn them and be careful to do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. Not with our fathers did the Lord make this covenant, but with us, who are all of us here alive today. The Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain, out of the midst of the fire, while I stood between the Lord and you at that time, to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up into the mountain. He said,
The Lord is Yahusha. He has always been here. Yes, he came as a baby through Mary, okay, to dwell physically amongst us, because he had to be the atoning lamb. But he has always been here. Who else would it be? Who else would it be? He's a manifestation of Yahweh. He's a droplet from heaven in flesh form. But he came also, like an angel, I guess. Yeah. Anyway.
I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain.
A lot of people say, well, what is in vain? Is that swearing? It's taking his name lightly, making mockery of his name, treading on his name, not holding it in reverence. Okay? And that's Yahweh, that's Yahweh, that's El Shaddai, that's El Elohim. It's all many names, but holding it with such reverence. Not treading on it lightly or using it for your own benefit, using it for gain. Okay, some people do. Some people, become leaders in certain things just so that they can have the money that comes with it. It's taking his name in vain. It's taking it for your own benefit. So we need to be careful of this. Yeah. Okay.
Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, or your male servant or your female servant, or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother, as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long, and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, and you shall not commit adultery, and you shall not steal, and you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and you shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or his male servant, or his female servant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick darkness, with a loud voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And as soon as you heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders. And you said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. This day we have seen God speak with man, and man still live. Now therefore, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any more, we shall die. For who is there of all flesh that has heard the voice of the living God speaking out of the midst of fire as we have, and has still lived? Go near and hear all that the Lord our God will say, and speak to us all that the Lord our God will speak to you, and we will hear and do it. And the Lord heard your words when you spoke to me, and the Lord said to me, I have heard the words of this people which they have spoken to you. They are right in all that they have spoken. Oh, that they had such a heart as this always, to fear me and to keep all my commandments, that it might go well with them and with their descendants forever. Go and say to them, return to your tents. But you stand here by me, and I will tell you the whole commandment and the statutes and the rules that you shall teach them, that they may do them in the land that I am giving them to possess. You shall be careful, therefore, to do as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. You shall walk in all the way that the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live, and that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land that you shall possess. Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of all good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve, and by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you. For the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies and his statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may go well with you, and that you may go in and take possession of the good land that the Lord swore to give to your fathers, by thrusting out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has promised. When your son asks you in time to come, what is the meaning of the testimonies and the statutes and the rules that the Lord our God has commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders, great and grievous, against Egypt and against Pharaoh and all his household, before our eyes. And he brought us out from there, that he might bring us in and give us the land that he swore to give to our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as we are this day. And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all this commandment before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God gives them over to you, and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them, and show no mercy to them. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons, or taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me, to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord would be kindled against you, and he would destroy you quickly. But thus shall you deal with them. You shall break down their altars, and dash in pieces their pillars, and chop down their Asherim, and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you, and chose you, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know, therefore, that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repays to their face those who hate him by destroying them. He will not be slack with one who hates him. He will repay him to his face. You shall therefore be careful to do the commandment and the statutes and the rules that I command you today.
Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. The faithful Yahweh, who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repays to their face those that hate him by destroying them. He will not be slack with one who hates him. He will repay him to his face, and shall therefore be careful to do the commandment and the statutes and the rules that I've commanded you today. Now, we don't do them. Even it says, fear the Lord your God. Absolutely. Because he can cast you into hell. I mean, it says, why fear the one that can kill your body? Fear the one that can take your soul to a place where it knows not. I think we've lost our fear of Yahweh. And a lot of these churches, they're very all about the good stuff, but we need to fear him, not fear like I'm afraid. Fear him because what he says is more important than what you think, actually. I might think that, Buddha is going to save me. I might think, Easter is something I'm going to celebrate and get everyone else to do that too. Well, going against his instructions and going against his ways shows an absolute disregard for who Yah is and for his kingdom and for his authority. You are putting yourself on the seat of authority. What you think? What happened to Eve in the garden? Satan said, oh, well, you can do what you want. Is he ruler over you, or is he, he's only saying that so you don't get wise. He's only saying that because of blah, blah, blah. You do what you want, and then you will be wise like him. I mean, what the heck? So do we think what we think is better than what God thinks? Do we think we know more? Do we think we'll learn more by disregarding these things? Really? Really? I mean, this is really serious, I feel. He gives us these things so we know how to live, so that our mind becomes his mind, so that we are separate from the world that we're living in. We are to be the salt of the earth. And what happens when the salt loses its saltiness? It's good for nothing. It gets tossed out. It doesn't do its job. There's no distinction. How is it if we do all these things that the world does And then we say that Jesus died for our sins. We don't even know what sin is, but for the law. And it's not law like the law, although it is, but it's done because you love him and you want to know him. I want to be acceptable to him. I want him to say, gosh, Kylie, well done. You worked it out. You come into my kingdom. You've done it. You've sorted it. And I know him. I know how he functions. I know how his kingdom operates. And it's going to be operating here on this earth, because if we do not know the law and do not know his ways, how are we ever to be of use to him when his kingdom is here on this earth? Do you think Jesus is going, or Yahushua is going to do Easter and Christmas? Do you think he's going to go to church on a Sunday? Heaven forbid. That's when he got the whip out and said, clean this place out. This has become a den of thieves. This has become corrupted. We need to be in alignment with him. He doesn't align with us. We align with him. And if we think that he has to align with us and what we think is right, there goes your pride. That's what it is. Seriously. Hundreds and thousands of people are doing what they think is right and absolutely disregarding the things that he has done and he has said. Our nation of Israel has gone astray massively, as it says, so that they will give them over to their deception. But what's sad is people don't think they're deceived. I suppose if they knew they were deceived, they wouldn't be deceived. We are to study his word, guys. It's only what he says that matters, not what other people say. Therefore, they are your God. He is to be your most high. Your instructions must come from him alone. And it says that heaven forbid that the law is done away with and the prophets. Heaven and earth will have to pass away before his law will be, because his law existed before this world existed, because he is the Torah made flesh. John 1:1. He's the Torah. He's a manifestation. He's a living word. What's word? Torah. His instructions. And the world knew it not. And yet he came to a place where they were already observing his ways. They were already observing Torah in his calendar. Yet their hearts were far from them. They were doing it because the Sanhedrin said so. They sat on the seat. And they put in all these extra laws, and it became completely burdensome. Well, you just read it. It's the 10 Commandments. Simple. It's already written in our conscience. But the Sabbaths, it's calendar, we need to organise and do. And his name, do not take his name lightly. Know his name, guys. You know? And yet, back then in Jesus' day, their hearts were far from them. How far further now away from him? How much have we been brainwashed and given into a delusion now? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Right, Isaiah 40. Let's go.
Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice cries, in the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. A voice says, cry. And I said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Go on up to a high mountain, O Zion, herald of good news. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good news. Lift it up, fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes with might, and his arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those that are with young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord, or what man shows him his counsel? Whom did he consult, and who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are accounted as the dust on the scales. Behold, he takes up the coastlands like fine dust. Lebanon would not suffice for fuel, nor are its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing, and emptiness. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? An idol. A craftsman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and casts for it silver chains. He who is too impoverished for an offering chooses wood that will not rot. He seeks out a skillful craftsman to set up an idol that will not move. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them like a tent to dwell in, who brings princes to nothing, and makes the rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows on them, and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me, that I should be like him, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing.
He talks about bringing out their host by number. It's the stars, it's the luminaries in the sky. Who are we? Who are we to say we know better? Who are we? Me and my house, we will serve Yahweh, and we will do according to his word, according to the ancient scrolls. Yahusha is our high priest. He came, he was the atonement, he died, he's up in heaven in the temple up there. He is from the tribe of Levite as much as the tribe of Judah. His mother's mother was Elizabeth's sister. She was a Levite. Mary's father was Joashim. He was from the tribe of Judah, the kingly line. He is our king and priest from the order of Melchizedek, which is what we are to be, kings and priests. Priest is the ordinance of the calendar, the feast dates. King is law. That's Melchizedek. And that's his order. It's a high. Well, I was going to say it's a high order. It's not. It's what we're all called to be. The inhabitants are like grasshoppers. He who sits above the circle of the earth. You know, we're his footstool. Stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent for us to dwell in. Who brings princes to nothing and makes rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely they are planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth. When he blows on them, they wither. Who are we to say, my way, what I think? Really? Isn't it what he says? Humble yourself this day, O Israel, and be saved. Humble yourself this day, O Jerusalem. You come into covenant. Cast off your burdens. Cast off vain imaginations. Come sit at the table of your Messiah this Passover. This Passover. It's like that parable where he calls all the good people of the world to come and sit at the table with the notables. Nobody would come. He prepared a feast. He's prepared it. Who will come? Who will come and sit? The time came. Nobody came, so he said to his fellow servants, go out into the streets, go out, get the people that are poor, get the homeless, let them come and sit and eat at my table, and I will feed them. I will give them living water and sustenance. The Passover lamb takes away the sins and the burdens of the world and of ourselves.
During the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, the word of God came to John, the son of Zechariah, in the wilderness, and he went into all the region around the Jordan, proclaiming a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. As it is written in the book of the words of Isaiah the prophet, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall become straight, and the rough places shall become level ways, and all flesh shall see the salvation of God. He said therefore to the crowds that came out to be baptized by him, you brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Bear fruits in keeping with repentance, and do not begin to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. For I tell you, God is able from these stones to raise up children for Abraham. Even now the axe is laid to the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And the crowds asked him, what then shall we do? And he answered them, whoever has 2 tunics is to share with him who has none, and whoever has food is to do likewise. Tax collectors also came to be baptized, and said to him, Teacher, what shall we do? And he said to them, collect no more than you are authorized to do. Soldiers also asked him, and we, what shall we do? And he said to them, do not extort money from anyone by threats or by false accusation, and be content with your wages. As the people were in expectation, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John, whether he might be the Christ.
So, yes. Here the way of the Lord, make his path straight. His path, not your path. His path straight. Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall become straight. Oh, yes. And the rough places shall become level ways, and all flesh shall see the salvation of Yahweh, which is Yahusha. And you know what? It's the same now. He's coming back, guys. The cup of indignation is fairly full amongst the nations, I shall say. Time is short. So that's the end of our Torah portion for today. I encourage you all to just really seek him in his ways and the good path, the ancient path. Because he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And when his kingdom comes, what's that going to look like? What's it really going to look like? He doesn't change, guys. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.